give me a second to get them.
Okay. So I think without further ado, I'm going to call the October 28th meeting of the IT Advisory Committee, Information Technology Advisory Committee, Town of Belmont to order. We have a quorum, and we are, in addition to the people here, we are streaming, so we are accessible via Zoom and Facebook Live. So we have a pretty packed schedule this evening, so I thought just let's move into it and start with the minutes that Dave circulated for our September 12th, 2019 meeting. I'm assuming everybody had a chance to look those over. Oh, I did not bring hard copy.
I've got a hard copy for okay. Thank you. But it's only one.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry. I just send it by email. I'm sorry, I didn't catch
what you do with multiple
I'm
things.
Mary Carter, Coordinator of Public Services for the Belmont Public Library.
She's the person who facilitated those fireside chats that we had in the library.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. I'm David Goldberg, Committee Secretary.
Hi, David.
Mary, you know me.
Hi, Paul. I know Glenn. I know Monica.
Oh, Charlie's smart.
Charlie, Hammond.
Alice, are you considered town staff or a member of the public? I'm sorry, I don't know anybody.
I am the community service coordinator at Belmont High School.
Okay.
Hi, Alice. I've heard so much about you.
You guys have never met?
Oh,
Oh, man. Okay. This is
I
great.
don't want to know.
Good stuff. Only good
No,
stuff.
really good stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Really good stuff, Alice.
So the last meeting was,
Make a motion to approve.
I will, do you need to look these over?
No, David sent out,
Yes,
I think twice maybe.
yes,
Not three
twice in
times.
fact, yes. Any
I'll second.
changes or, no? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Minutes are approved. Public comments and questions. We do have a couple non-committee members here, but I don't know if you have any other airing of grievances or other issues to bring to the committee's attention?
I just wanted to talk to you guys about a potential program.
Yes,
I can excuse myself for 5 minutes.
go right ahead. And I'm looking, there are no virtual attendees, so I think we can move past the public comments and questions. We were, yeah,
I was going to say, why don't we reorder it so the discussion
of course,
moves up,
yes.
because Alice and Mary are here.
Yes, so I would like to, we were supposed to have an executive session with Belmont Municipal Light,
Yeah.
but that's not going to happen. And so, because of the scheduling conflict, so rather than go through the other stuff, I would like to move the discussion on community engagement and education up, because we've got Mary and Alice here to talk about it.
But
Yes.
before we close, I'd still like to go to executive session to deal with that minutes issue.
Okay, we're going to have to kick Mary and Alice out of the room.
But that would be much, we could do that at the end.
Yeah, we can
Yes.
That's what I'm saying, right before we close.
Got it. So let's not dispense with the executive session.
Because by then they'll want to leave.
They will want to leave. I expect they'll want to leave immediately after they've said their that sounds great, Dave. We'll move that till after the community engagement and education discussion. Okay. So this is these are kind of two separate initiatives that have come to us.
Well, I assume Mary's is the third, right? So the item on Dana,
Yes,
let's leave
that's
that to
true.
last, since
Okay.
that was a separate.
Yeah, three.
Yeah,
You're right,
another
actually,
conversation.
three. Yeah. So, hey, Phil, sit down.
Thank you.
So, Mary, would you want to start with your
Sure.
idea and
It's
go from there?
very tentative, so
That's fine.
I'm helping you out and
Yeah.
help you flesh it out. So this all started because we have a subscription to lynda.com at the library, which I think some of you have even used.
Mhm.
And this year, before our renewal, they informed us that lynda.com, and stop me if you've all heard about this already, lynda.com is being acquired by LinkedIn, and they're rebranding lynda.com as LinkedIn Learning. In order for our patrons to continue to use lynda.com, they will now have to have a LinkedIn account. So for us, that poses some privacy concerns, and generally just some concerns in terms of what the trend is going to be from now on when we subscribe to an online resource. Will people need to provide personal information? Right now, if you go on lynda.com, you can just put in your library card number and you don't have anything associated with your name. I think that gets tracked. You can take classes pretty much anonymously.
And just for folks who might be watching or
Yeah.
listening after the fact, lynda.com, just explain how patrons use it.
Sure, lynda.com is really like like thousands of online courses. You can even earn certificates for certain areas of study, including learning how to code, C++. It really runs the gamut. You can learn digital photography on there. The library purchases a subscription to lynda.com every year, and as a Belmont resident with a Belmont library card, you gain access that.
Okay, so it's like an online learning platform.
Correct. That's exactly what it is.
Now part of LinkedIn.
LinkedIn bought it.
Right.
So that means it's Microsoft's fault, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So the question is, you're right, I think, in assuming that getting a LinkedIn account, if you're going to at least take it seriously, it requires the divulging of a tremendous amount of personal information beyond your name and email address.
Right, and I think so. The library world has had a lot of back and forth with LinkedIn, and actually now that whole process is paused. Any library who subscribed to Lynda had the option to kind of get involved with a petition that I think the Massachusetts Library Association sent to LinkedIn asking them, to please not implement this. So they listened, and that's now on hold. So I don't know if the transition to LinkedIn Learning will happen anytime soon, but it got me thinking about the fact that every time someone goes online and signs up for something, you've got those terms and conditions that you agree to, right?
Yes.
And who knows, for the most part, because nobody reads those, what those say and what happens to the data you provide once you hit that agree button. So I was hoping one of you could talk to our patrons about that.
So ultimately, I think the request is to have some sort of forum around
Yeah.
online privacy,
Yeah.
using this acquisition as an example of.
Yeah, because when it was going to get implemented, when lynda.com was going to change over to LinkedIn Learning, and we were going to have this problem on our hands of, like essentially our patrons' information would be getting saved in a way that we didn't know about, we were going to do a big campaign about it, right?
Yes, right.
And really just let people know this is what's going to happen.
Right.
Feel free to keep using Lynda. We're going to have it until it, if people stop using it, we won't continue to purchase a subscription, but for the meantime, and honestly, why would we get rid of something like that? It's such a valuable resource when people, I'm pretty sure, are left and right giving away their personal information, which is disturbing.
John.
This is really bad.
Bad,
In my
yeah. Yeah.
And I think just having a forum,
Yeah.
even if it's only even if it's as frequently as once a year,
Mhm.
is not sufficient. Because I think you're going to find people who are going to go want to use the resource of lynda.com and do all this stuff and not realize that the user agreement that they're accepting
Right.
is associated with LinkedIn, and it's going to come back to bite you.
Okay.
I can just see the outrage when someone finally discovers, oh, look what the library is having us do, and it's not going to look good. One thing, I don't know if it's feasible, but I think it is are people getting to lynda.com? Oh, either they're not going into the library, but they're going.
No, they
So
are.
they're doing
And
it from
pardon
home.
if I didn't explain this part well. LinkedIn Learning has not become a thing yet. Lynda.com still operates.
But I do access lynda.com with my library card from my home.
Yes.
All right. Because my idea was going to be if they're accessing it only from the library premises,
Mhm.
that when they go to lynda.com and actually they get a splash page immediately saying, beware, this is what you're signing up for, and then it forwards them on to the LinkedIn/lynda.com.
Got it.
But you can't do that for people if people are signing it from home.
We were planning on doing it from our website if this gets implemented.
So if I guess I didn't ask my question well enough then.
Mhm.
If I want to access lynda.com from
Yeah.
home,
Yes.
I have to go through the library website? Or can I go directly from, I fire up my browser and I type in
That's a really good
lynda.com?
question. We always tell people to go through our website because it's a particular link, right?
Right.
They have to, and I don't know that you can save that successfully, like from
You're right.
home.
I don't.
So that's something to look into.
If they have to go through your website first, then you do have the option, and I encourage you to use it.
Correct.
And I mean, obviously, the rest of the committee will have an opinion as well, but that you warn everyone who signs up that this is what they're signing up for.
Great.
Just to try to protect yourself as much as you can. But I think eventually someone's going to stumble across this after the fact. They're going to have signed up, and then they're going to realize that they're really now attached to LinkedIn, and they're not going to like that. Could be bad.
Yeah. Hopefully, when they were going through this new process, if it gets implemented, which, I mean, it's on pause, but we're pretty sure at some point they're going to be like, too bad, we're doing it.
Yeah.
They have to sign up with LinkedIn. So hopefully there would be some,
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be pretty obvious once that happens.
Well, there are two levels of bad here. I guess I was thinking, I mean, that's sort of the second level of bad, which I think people are going to object to, right? Having to have a LinkedIn account, realizing all this stuff is linked, no pun intended. The other level of bad, which I was mostly referring to, was them not having to sign up with a LinkedIn account and get a LinkedIn account, but by virtue of doing this stuff with lynda.com, LinkedIn is collecting all of this information, and maybe at some point in the future, will eventually, if the person then does sign up with LinkedIn, gets a LinkedIn account, tie things together. And
It looks like, at least from their site, it doesn't look like LinkedIn is allowing any more new lynda.com signups. So that's what they have right now. I don't know if that's changed since there was sort of outcry about that.
right.
So I mean,
So-
this affects new users as well, right, in that way.
Right. I should check. It's my understanding. So we've been corresponding with lynda.com, and what we received was like, we're putting this LinkedIn Learning on hold. So like whatever we've been doing up until this point is what goes. But it sounds like what you're experiencing.
Well, that's on their frequently asked questions at the moment. So-
Oh, okay, great.
So I don't know.
Interesting.
How heavily is it used?
It's used as one of our most well-used databases. And it really, the content on there, we can't find an alternative. So that's the biggest thing, is that we always want people to be making informed decisions, but the fact that like not having Lynda is essentially putting us, there will be a huge gap there in what, we can offer people. We're not inclined to get rid of it.
so I guess going back to my earlier comment, just warn the heck out of people.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you're right. I don't think you can do just one a year or whatever. But I would love for someone to come, and I think the natural inclination is to just click on that agree. And wouldn't it be nice, you know, you get like the nickel tour of what that means, right? Like how your data gets stored into a company's database and then what happens from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea, I think, should be, like you said, you know, informed consent. So again, lynda.com offers wonderful courses.
Right.
You need to understand that this is how they're going to be using your data. You know, hear what the laws governing that are, which in the United States are not many, and kind of, you know, buyer beware, I guess, or user beware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Set
Did
up
you
a
have a time-
VPN through Europe and get GDPR to take effect.
Yeah.
Do you have a time frame in mind when you'd like to have this program?
Oh, I mean, it's on your guys' time frame. So probably within the next couple of months, Linda or LinkedIn will give us an update for the new year.
Because this like applies to a lot of other services as well.
That's the problem there. I mean, people could get a New York Times subscription through us. So they sign up for a New York Times account. You know, where does that data go?
Yeah, but they're signing up for a New York Times account. They probably realize that the New York Times is going to get that information. If they sign up for lynda.com, and you'll have to forgive me, I missed the first 5 minutes of this.
Sure.
They may not realize that lynda.com is part of LinkedIn
That's right.
unless somebody tells them. If somebody
Right.
tells them at the moment,
Yeah.
then I personally,
Right.
if I was doing this, if I was a user of lynda.com, I'd say, oh, things have changed. And I have to realize that lynda.com is really LinkedIn.
I don't, and I'm sorry if I'm not describing it appropriately. I don't think they're trying to hide the ball on the fact that they're going to be LinkedIn Learning. I think that's going to be all over the place. They're going to know they're signing up for a LinkedIn account. It's the fact that now, instead of what we have now, where you can go on Lynda with your library card number, take courses, and have no, you know, personal information like your name or whatever involved. Now, to get into lynda.com/LinkedIn Learning, you have to give your name, you have to give your email.
Is it going to cost?
No.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost us.
It does-
I mean,
doesn't-
it's sorry,
yeah.
it doesn't cost
Well,
a patron.
Is LinkedIn Learning going to cost?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Not for the lynda.com subscription that we will
Oh.
have.
I see. Got it.
So patrons will not pay for
Got
it, except for in their
Right.
taxes.
Right.
So it's the library pays for it.
Correct, it's part of our budget.
It's possible that they're tracking all of this stuff already.
I'm sure.
And I mean, even for the lynda.com accounts, even without signing in as a particular person, there's a lot of characteristics that are carried around in the cookies of your web browser. And so companies are very good at figuring out, even if you're not signed into a website, who you are.
Right.
Based on other websites. So although this does sound appalling, it might not actually be any worse than what's going on now. We just don't know yet.
That's why we're not inclined to get rid of lynda.com, because, you know, we're penalizing them for having a name switch when I do think that there are other resources that we use that are probably doing some version, right?
Yeah.
Of that. So I just really want to let people know, you know, that that's happening. And it's easy to just click on that agree and then forget about it.
Sure.
But
Well, they should also so there are a couple issues. I mean, one is that
Correct.
the herd for people who don't have LinkedIn accounts, the hurdle of creating a LinkedIn account may dissuade them from using lynda.com at all, because it's fairly, I mean, you know, again, if you're going to do it for real, you need to input a fair amount of personal information. And it's great once you've got it, but that may be more than they want to do just to use lynda.com. For people who do have a LinkedIn account, I think it's worthwhile understanding, as you know, LinkedIn's one of those services like Facebook or Google, where that many sites use as a proxy as an identity, you know, kind of alternative. But then you should understand, well, what are they getting access to? Do they get access to all my contacts? Do they get access to?
So it's been a long time since I signed up for LinkedIn. What do they ask from you at this point?
to get an account,
To get, I think, just a name and email to set one up.
that's pretty much
That's
right.
it.
Yeah.
I think we wind up pouring out this information normally.
I mean, it's gonna ask you for all
About
your
your, at
friends
least
and
your
all that, but you don't have to
Yeah.
tell us.
No, you don't.
maybe not just social.
I mean, I just don't know if
security
my guess is that it's gonna be for, thinking for the average user, it's gonna be this very slick kind of like, oh, you're naming your email, now tell me where you work, now tell me your other employees, and before they know it, they've barfed up a whole lot of information about themselves instead of just clicking like cancel.
Yeah.
I guess the other issue would be, are there things that we could recommend or that the committee could recommend to help provide some anonymous alternatives, whether those are generic LinkedIn accounts that library patrons could use to access this that would not, it would be kind of sock puppet accounts that wouldn't necessarily involve them giving personal information away.
There's
Probably in terms of service.
It's probably in terms of service, but it's also, we would have to create a sock puppet for every single user, otherwise we'll be able to track their progress through the courses.
That's true, right?
And they wouldn't be able, and when they got a certificate,
So-
they would have the sock puppet's name on
In
it.
the interest of time, can I propose that we take this discussion into the forum that Mary is suggesting we actually have,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Rather than solve it here
Yeah.
during this meeting, right? And I think that would be fine. What I'm going to suggest is that the subcommittee on technology, cybersecurity, and public health would gladly take this on and form an appropriate program for it.
Is that you, Charlie?
I'm one, not the only. You just spoke to the
Well,
man himself
I think-
down there. Yeah, Dan, myself, and Glenn at this point in time.
Dan.
We have to be careful because we're on camera here. I don't think we can deliberate for that committee, but I certainly think that that committee, if it was proposed that committee, they would accept it.
Okay, I got it.
So we'll take, so it's a subcommittee of this committee. We'll follow up
Of
with
that
you.
committee in this room at this time?
Almost.
We're missing one more.
Jim Sircusa.
Oh, right.
From the,
I think you've got a quorum though.
That's okay.
If-
But yeah, but convene a meeting. We didn't publish an agenda.
Yeah, right. Oh, right, yes. Someday I'll figure that out.
Speaking hypothetically.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Yeah. No, I think I think we can make that happen.
I hope
and,
that committee
there's a lot to
schedules
talk
a
about.
meeting soon. I don't remember when their next meeting is.
So just at the discretion of the chair.
We're in the same position. Okay, so anything else? Okay, so the other issue, and this kind of touches on the library, so would you be willing to hang
We're
around for a
pretty
minute?
much everywhere.
Okay,
so,
yeah. Is with my friend Alice, and I reached out to Alice a number of months ago regarding an idea that has come up in committee numerous times, which is on creating or standing up some kind of intergenerational, like Genius Bar type service. So we've received a number of inbound emails at various times from various parties, whether it's a senior community or what have you, saying basically we've got a lot of residents in town who are in need of help with computer issues, could be learning how to use their system, troubleshooting problems, what have you. And is there any resource available to help them with this? I reached out to Alice, who is the community service coordinator for Belmont Public Schools,
But just the high school,
just the high school, sorry. That's right, because middle school, they do it as well.
they don't.
They don't do public service?
Well, they have a community service club.
Yeah.
But there is
It's
no
not a
longer a
requirement.
requirement.
So
But
for
there is a requirement at the high school.
There
is.
Still.
Yes.
So Alice facilitates all kinds of student engagements every school year, really across the community, including in a recent Foundation for Belmont Education run as well. And so I would reach out to her to say, is there an interest within Belmont High? Would there be students interested in doing this, provided we could give them some instruction and work with them to stand this up? And the answer is yes, there is. So Alice, maybe just tell us a little bit about the outreach you've done. And
Not a whole lot this year.
Okay.
So I just sent something out last year that there was this idea, and if they were interested, to let me know. I heard from 6 people who are now, they were freshmen and sophomores, and now they're sophomores and juniors, which I think is a really nice,
that's good.
because the freshmen are fresh off,
Yeah.
and the seniors may be less interested because they're applying to college.
Lots of other
That's right.
things to do,
Yeah.
right?
So I would like to send out, when I get a better sense of sort of where we're going, I'd like to send out something soon to all students, and again, ask for their interest in possibly helping seniors and others, other residents in Belmont, probably at the library.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. So that was the idea about proximity to the high school, and also just, getting the public.
Weekends, doesn't matter.
And the
TBD, I think, yeah.
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 I was gonna say the high school, or the library makes sense. The Beach Street Center would seem like it would also be a logical place.
Yes, though harder for high school kids to get to if they don't have a car. Like,
if they don't.
I know, nothing in Belmont is hard to get to.
Yeah,
It's a small town.
Yeah.
It's
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the winter especially.
Yeah, but libraries, yeah.
The senior center, the Beach Street Center also has that bus that they can use. They can bring people over.
Yep.
If people are already at the Beach Street Center, they can bring them to the library. They may already be doing that
Yes,
on a regular schedule.
that's right.
And maybe that the high school students are more mobile than some of the seniors.
Could be.
Likely.
I think location, we could probably try some different locations and see, what type of response we get, what kind of turnout. Yeah. But my thinking on this, and I mean, Al's kind of tell me if this would work, would be as a kind of, genius bar type offering where people, that's trademarked, so we're not going to use that name, but, people would come in, ideally sign up in advance with a problem, come in for a scheduled appointment, meet with a student, that there would be some kind of an adult supervisor to kind of help. And that over time, we would probably start to see some patterns emerge in the types of problems people are bringing in. And then maybe that would lead to, maybe we can do some small group instruction or something around these common problems that we're seeing, and free up time for more, specific types of issues. But that it would be stuff that, my sense is a lot of the problems are things that a pretty knowledgeable student could help people help adults work through. Yeah.
I have some questions that, since you're here now.
That's fine. I may not have the answers, but that's okay.
I understand.
I am absolutely not a tech person.
No, this actually has nothing to do with tech. Conceptually, I think this sounds like a great idea. First of all, there probably are a lot of older and not so old people out there who do need this form of, tech, ITAC support. And then you've got kids who have to meet community service requirements. The question I have is, we're moving into an area where the kids would be providing professional service. That's what they're doing, okay? Now, I'm sure you have other instances of that. They're working in a way that is a substitute for professional. Are there any liability issues that you have to contend with?
Well, I have not had to do that. My husband, who is a retired tax lawyer, is very concerned about the liability issues. People are going to come and they're going to have their data, and he said it to me again today as I was walking out the door, and I don't know, other than my bringing it to your attention.
And we do not have a lawyer on the committee. Okay, some of us, I dare say, probably know about those issues, maybe have dealt with those issues. I'm not included in that group except for a business context, and this isn't a business context. So I'm just bringing it up as an issue that we've got to be clear on for all concerned. The recipient of the service, the kid, yourself as the director, and this committee is sort of the progenitor, if you wish, of this idea, which I still think is a good idea.
I consider myself a conduit.
Sure.
So we have a town council, we can ask.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We do have a town council who might be able to get some quick answers to that.
And that would be, I think, helpful to have before we move
Yeah.
Yeah.
forward.
There may be some, I agree that we need to ask town council for their opinion, but I think there are some things we can also do that might mitigate the risks. For example, we'd say that the owner of the computer is the only one that can type on. So the helper might be able to say, well, type this command or open this window or click here, but they never touch the keyboard. They'll never, put something in the drive or remove any data from it.
That's a good point.
That it's not foolproof, but makes it a little more complicated.
That sort of helps to guarantee the secrecy of the data. But what happens if the 16-year-old says, do this, and poof?
Yeah.
This is an extreme, contingency, but what if he causes the machine to break
I
down?
think there has to be some sort of waiver that
Right.
this is a best effort, volunteer sort of thing, and there are no guarantees.
Yeah.
You bring us a problem, we may not have a solution, it might make it worse.
Well, I
And we
think,
could probably mitigate, practically, maybe you say, listen, before you come in, you should back up your data, and here's how you do that, and so on and so forth. But my guess is we're not the first people to run across this issue or problem, so we probably get a idea from town
Well, that could be
council.
part of the waiver. Before you came in, did you back up your data?
Yes.
Do you know what backing up the data?
Yeah, well,
Yes.
that's
What I'm here to talk about.
Yeah.
That's the problem I brought you.
I kind of feel like there's probably training that goes along with that for the individuals. So there's more than just get a bunch of people in a room and
Yeah.
Absolutely.
let it
Yeah, we
happen,
had talked
right?
about that.
Right.
Yeah.
So if, my thinking is if we were to work with Alice to stand this up, we would probably want to bring, I don't know if we'd want to bring Steve into the loop or Dave. I know they've done some of this locally as well.
Steve Mazzola.
Yeah,
Steve would be a likely
yeah.
launch.
And I know
Well,
Dave,
Dave Pedal's done
done things like
programs
this
there,
at the senior center, I know. Bring them into the loop, probably come up with some kind of a curriculum.
Yeah, I think the hardest part about something like this is you're going to need someone to actually run it.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
You need a volunteer who coordinates all this, who thinks
Yep.
about all the questions that were, and basically schedules the kids, focuses on what the training is. And we can't necessarily do that by committee. So it has to be like one or two people who run this, and that's presumably a volunteer position.
Yes.
So, identifying someone who is both capable and willing to do that would probably be the linchpin.
Could be somebody on committee, could be somebody not on committee.
That's right. And just for reference, I don't know if folks are aware, there's a similar program that's actually run through Habitat. It's the Habitat Intergenerational Program, or HIP. So it's the same idea of mixing folks, sort of seniors around town, as well as students, and they get community service credit for the work that they do together to help maintain the habitat wildlife, essentially.
But they're not just limited to students. I mean, they're little kids who come.
Correct,
there.
yeah,
It's
right.
the
It's
whole-
intergenerational, right? It
Yeah.
spans the whole gamut,
Yeah.
correct.
I wonder if Richard Berger would have any cycles to do something like this.
Fill it down at the senior center.
What does he do there?
He plays a similar role with, people come in with their computers and he
That's
helps. He helps them out.
Yeah,
Gives little
he's on
seminars.
paid staff at the,
Is he a resident as well?
I don't know if he's a resident, but he's at the Center for Aging.
Okay.
He was sort of a volunteer, I think, and then they actually made it a position for him in the last 2 years.
So maybe reach out to him. He might be somebody who could step right into this.
Well, we should probably really reach out to Nalva before we try to poach one of our employees to see how much time he has available.
This could be a logical extension of what he's already doing, because you just take on the students and provide a certain amount of adult supervision, and they'd fall under his rubric. Yep. Anything else.
Well, and he already probably has a tremendous amount of knowledge about the types of problems that are common and,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So would that mean that it would more likely be at Beach Street Center?
If this gentleman stepped forward and said it.
Not necessarily, but maybe, I don't know.
He comes to the
So
library too.
Yeah, he comes
Does
to
does he go to the library?
He was, and I can't remember now, but we do one-on-one tech helps. And I think he was involved in that initially.
And the ages of the recipients were not necessarily seniors, I assume.
For the most part, they are.
And who ran them? I mean, was it?
The one-on-one tech helps we do through the library.
Okay. Got it.
So you.
And is it always him who is the,
No, so initially it was library staff and volunteers, and Richard was one of the two volunteers. And then we did not get enough one-on-one tech help requests to sustain also volunteers in addition to library staff.
Well, how do you think the library would feel if 3 or 4 energetic, highly knowledgeable teenagers show up and say, we'll work for you in this capacity? I mean, in other words, if we're trying to tie
The
into,
library.
yeah.
I could talk to our teen librarian about whether or not that would be a potential teen community service project. And I mean, we would have to.
Again, if you didn't find the numbers of people who actually wanted the help, then it's either a matter of a little bit more advertisement or maybe there isn't the audience. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, or it could be the platform we use is you have to sign up for an appointment.
Yeah, I see.
So it might be the
It's too
Genius
onerous.
Bar.
Yeah.
is
Sort of
easy.
drop in. This is yeah, an event.
We have found through experience, subcommittee, cybersecurity subcommittee, in organizing what we thought were gangbuster presentations. And then to be honest with you, we didn't really know how to properly advertise it
Right.
to get a gangbusters reception and audience. And I think,
This might suffer a similar fate.
well,
Yeah.
except that we might be able to change our approach. And there are people in town that I think are more successful at this than maybe the subcommittee has been. And
Yeah.
for all I know, maybe your effort as well.
Yeah, and I think we should have a conversation with the teen librarian, Rachel Moyer, to kind of figure out, she might even have, if you have particular teens in mind, right? Or honestly, just to kind of get a better sense of how that would work.
Well, if it were at the senior center, you kind of have a built-in audience with
And
a
they're familiar with it.
right, yeah, and it's a time period where people can set aside time to bring their devices in that they want to ask questions about. So you might just have a natural built-in audience, right?
Yep.
That would be my concern, is how do you have the same experience, right? How do you that you just you have the willing volunteers, but you just don't have the audience.
How late is the senior center open though? Is it like only open till 4?
Typically, most of the programming ends mid-afternoon, and then because it's technically the Beach Street Center, not the senior center, right?
Right.
So the center gets used for other programming in the late afternoon to early evening.
Yeah.
So for example, like there are like parkour classes or archery classes or these other kung fu classes that happen in the late afternoon or early evening.
So I thought they were only open.
So as a senior
Yeah.
center, I think the programming goes until about 3-ish.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, but then there are other things that happen past that.
Right. And for some of those, you need to pay to use the
Correct.
premises. I don't know whether this would be part of that or whether we would be able to just access it.
I'm
CEU. I mean,
guessing if it's a volunteer program, you're probably not going to have to pay. But
yes, in the
I
past, I've
yeah.
noticed
I
that
tend to agree with you.
town committees are able to, in the past anyway, town committees have been able to rent the rooms in the Beach Street Center for no charge. Although, if it requires cleaning up, we have to cover that.
Yeah, but this isn't the type of thing that would probably require that.
Probably not.
So the device is broken and looks all over the time.
So it sounds like we all agree it's a good idea.
I
It
think
sounds like there are some other programs that have happened before that we could learn from or coordinate with, right? Dave Petto's, the one-on-one that he described, right? Again, I think the challenge is how do we get it off the ground, right? How do we find someone who's going to have the energy to go through and start working all these angles and putting together a program, right? Sounds like we could approach NEVA and see if doing something with Richard Berger might be an option. So that's one possible avenue we could pursue.
Or just using the Beach Street Center as a base of operations during the, what you might call the after hours is a possibility.
And it occurs to me that I think Richard has been working at the media center quite a bit, so he may be fully subscribed. But he's not our only hope. We'll find someone.
Do one of you on the Public Health and Safety Subcommittee want to reach out to Richard and gauge his interest?
Yeah,
Do you know him?
we should be reaching out to NEVA first.
Yeah.
Right? But yes, we could put that on our agenda too.
Or both of them? I mean, this is not necessarily competitive with what he's doing at Beach Street Center. This would be.
I think we should talk to, well, we should talk to him. We should talk to the people we know he's been working with recently.
Yeah.
Just not to make unfair demands on his time.
Of course. Sure. And I think contingent on us finding somebody either on committee or off who can be a coordinator, we could work with that person to stand up the program, develop curriculum, support them and so on. And obviously with Alice and the students at Belmont High. Maybe with the goal of standing it up in the second semester. Q1, if we can get everything, all the ducks in a row.
How many hours is the community service?
Students have to do 40 hours over 4 years. But that being said, every year there's between 10 and 15% of the student body that does 100 hours in a year.
Yep.
So there's some people who are, like that, but there are many more people who really embrace it.
Don't they get an award if they
Yes.
see a certain amount of time?
We are affiliated with the President's Volunteer Service Award, which is a quasi-governmental thing that comes from the Point of Light Foundation, and there's a CCCR, I don't know, community something or other. And so they started this a number of years ago. We affiliated. I don't know, I'm going to guess it's been maybe 15 years anyway. And it is a minimum at the high school level of 100 hours in 1 year.
So Alice, just explain to us, I think, final issue, which is what, from a bureaucratic kind of process standpoint, what would need to happen on the Belmont Public Schools and to stand this program up? Are there paperwork that needs to be filed or notifications or anything like that?
Well, I think clearly we would need to talk with the powers that be. They'd probably be thrilled with it, is my guess. There would have to be a login for the students so that we can keep track of their hour, and they can keep track of their hours. And then there are forms that they fill out for what they're doing. Beyond that, I don't know that there will be, I think that as long as the lawyer approves and those kinds of issues that are fairly frightening, I think they need to be hammered out before we even go forward beyond that, I think.
Okay.
So just as a procedural thing that, we'll get the subcommittee together within the next few weeks. We'll talk about this, try to get the plan together. And I would say let's shoot to get a response back to you before Thanksgiving.
Does that work?
Yeah,
A response, right? I mean,
a response, not the complete definitive one, but a response.
And I will take it upon myself to follow up with town council, George, and
That would be
ask his opinion on this.
I think one of the keys to success will be to providing good guidelines to the students about what they can and cannot do. So if someone comes in and says, I don't know how to open a URL, then we can help them. But if they say, I need help doing my taxes. No, we're not.
Maybe my husband's interested.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
exactly.
I don't
And
think
we'll have
so.
all
Yeah,
this.
I really need to hack my husband's phone.
None of that.
Yeah, none of that.
But yeah, I mean, I think I've done some training just around cybersecurity stuff and information sessions at the Beach Street Center, and I'm always impressed at how many people show up for those and have
Yeah.
questions, and it's actually a fairly savvy population. So anyway, okay. Listen, thank you so much, both of you, for coming in.
Thank
Feel
you.
free to hang out.
So
Yes.
I'm going to wait until I hear from you guys
Yes.
before I do anything else. I'm not going to put it, I will talk to the 6 people that I have to see if they're still interested. I'm not sure beyond that.
That's probably.
That's
good.
fine. Yeah, I think that's.
And before you go, let me just touch on the third thing that we mentioned
Oh,
was on
sure,
the list.
right. Yep.
Because it is pertinent.
Yep.
So Dana Levitt works at the Center
Yep.
for Aging, and she reached out to us also with a request for a program. I spoke to her last week, and she runs these programs for seniors during the day, once a week, something like that. And she was interested in having one specifically around cybersecurity. So she asked if we would be willing to help organize or offer a speaker. For one of these, it's typically middle of the day, so that might be tricky for some of us who are otherwise occupied. But she's got slots available. The next available slot is actually January 31st, right? And it's like a 1:15 p.m. slot. So the point is, it ties in with some of this. It's obviously for the senior audience, but I said I bring it up to the committee. I think again, it's something that we would probably be very happy to support if we just find someone who's willing to do it and can coordinate. And we've got a lot of there's a long runway before. It's most likely something that wouldn't happen in February. But she has all these different slots. She'd be very accommodating to have someone come in. We can just talk about some basic safety issues, right?
Okay.
Things that most of us are familiar with, or have, we can try to find someone who, if none of us can do it, we could try to invite someone who would feel comfortable talking about these topics. Password security, click safety, phishing scams, things like that.
Is this a one-time thing?
Yes, it's a one-time.
Like January 31st or whatever at 1:15, that's like
Correct.
one and done?
One and done.
Okay. We can put something together by then.
Yeah, exactly. So again, we can take that up in our subcommittee as yet a similar thing in this sort of vein. But I just wanted to share that, and that was the conversation we had last week, that she had reached out to Paul and myself to basically say this is something else that we think there's a need for, and would love to get this committee's assistance with.
Is anyone else interested in being on that committee? Because we're just grabbing a lot of work right now. Not sure if anyone else would like to get involved.
Well, the 21st Century Government Committee, subcommittee has not met in a few months and are undertasked, although frankly, we have a couple issues coming up as well with remote access and the website that I think are going to occupy us.
Do you know if we found a replacement for Cheryl?
I was gonna ask that same question.
I do
I already
not.
did ask.
Dave already did, and I have been delinquent. I do not believe that there is a replacement for Cheryl. I will put it on my list to follow up with the Board of
I
Selectmen.
think she was.
Yeah.
I can follow up if you want.
That would be great.
Who appointed her?
Yeah.
I thought she was a selectman.
No, because
And-
the three
I
of us
thought it
were.
was a library.
I think the other thing would be if,
She must have been school committee then, if,
Must be
it's your
school committee.
library, right?
I'm library, yeah.
Yeah,
So school committee?
so it sounds
I
like.
think at this
that
point,
process
why
of
don't we
elimination.
let Alice
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Mary return to their regularly scheduled.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
for coming in. I really appreciate it.
We'll be in touch.
Good to meet you.
In terms of, it would be good to give the school committee, I think, a sense of, thank you so much, Alice. Really appreciate it. We will get back to you.
Okay, sounds good.
Sorry. I'll be right back.
Alice, actually did have one other issue.
I think it would be good to give school committee some names and suggestions for filling Cheryl's position. So I think we should definitely preference having a woman replace Cheryl. I think, you know, at the very least, you know,
Yeah.
one or more on committee,
Yeah, we may want,
underrepresented that way.
we may want to think in terms of somebody, I don't know if this is sort of like Shanghai, the next member, but who specifically would work with us on the cybersecurity. You know,
Yeah.
somebody who has that background and interest and say, sure, you know, I'll do that.
So I guess the task to all of us is, can you brainstorm or get on your LinkedIn and look for folks who are Belmont residents and who have ideally women who would be good candidates for this committee. I think I agree with Charlie. Obviously, cybersecurity is a big topic, and it'd be great to have another person with that domain expertise. Doesn't have to be that, though. I could also see somebody with, I don't know, you know, public sector expertise, public sector IT, but really IT generally would be great. And so that we go to school committee, not just with the, hey, you need to nominate somebody, but also with, here are some names that, you know, we've identified as being people to reach out to.
I think there's a lot of backgrounds that would be pretty interesting. We have a fair amount of representation from cybersecurity at this point, one way or the other.
It's true.
But
Lawyer.
when folks talk about the GIS systems, I mean, it'd be great to have somebody that understood a little bit more about that kind of software.
Yes, or as just came up, somebody with a legal background and some technology savvy as well.
Yeah.
Right? Who could, but I would say, yeah, Dan, what you were saying, be extremely relevant. Yeah. Maybe a little harder to find.
Go on LinkedIn, you can find anything.
That's
About
right.
anyone.
Yes. So take that for what it will. But work your network, brainstorm, feel free to shoot Glenn and I an email and just say, hey, here's some people I thought of that you should reach out to. And we can follow up and at least see if they're interested, pass their names along to school committee, give them a head start. They've got a lot on their plate. So the more we can do for them, the better. Okay. So next item we had was the report out on ransomware preparedness. That is a little bit on hold as we're waiting to finish up our interviews with all the stakeholders. But just a note that we are going to be putting together a short kind of report to the Board of Selectmen and our other nominating committees just on what our assessment is of our risk posture, I guess. Is that the word you'd use?
I'd like to make a comment here, if I may.
Yeah.
A report on the ransomware preparedness of the town seems like the sort of information that might be valuable to someone who is planning a ransomware attack on the town.
That's why we've been doing it all in executive.
Yeah, that's why it's all in
So,
executive committee.
I would hope that this report was treated with proper controls.
That's
Yes.
why it's done in executive session.
Yes.
The minutes
Yeah.
are not published. I agree with you.
But it's not crossed out like the rest of this.
It's crossed out because,
We weren't doing it.
because Robin wasn't here tonight to do his part.
All right. My concerns are satisfied.
I totally concur with your concerns and we agree, and this will be done in executive session and the report would be discussed in executive session, so not for public consumption for obvious reasons. But thank you. Okay, 5G mesh network. I believe the Board of Selectmen are meeting or having some discussions right now about the 5G deployment. We have given them a first draft of our 5G write-up, but we have some work left to do on it, namely seeing what other one request from our meeting with the selectmen was to give them a sense of what other communities are doing vis-a-vis these types of proposals, either from extranet or other providers, small, trial deployment of 5G cell sites, and what their planning is and what they're thinking about those is. So we're working on that.
So the interesting thing is Paul got connected with someone who is,
Vinny.
yeah, Vinny, I forget his last name, but he's involved in the same decision-making process in Watertown. And we're trying to get a conversation with him. It's just, we keep missing each other a little bit. So it looks like there may be an opportunity within the next day or two to try to have a conversation with him. Right? That could be quite helpful. He did take a quick look at the application that was on public record here and said it was similar to what they've done in Watertown. And they had approved and done some work a few months prior. Right. So that could be helpful for us to know.
So Watertown approved a similar application, you're saying?
Yes.
That's what he said.
Same provider, presumably?
No.
That I don't remember,
I do not
but he
think
said
so.
there was a similarity. He also made a claim, which we have, again, it's just off through email, but he said like it's not a true 5G network that they were proposing, that it was actually a variant of 4G. And I don't know if you had picked up on that, I had not.
I confess I didn't get that far into that email thread, I guess. I don't remember that point. Yeah, I think the same thing is true of the proposed deployment here. It's only a small fraction of what would be necessary for a really effective 5G rollout. So it'd be really great if you're standing underneath it, but it's not going to be great for a very large part of the town.
Right.
Maybe,
So Verizon briefed us at MITRE on 5G recently.
Okay.
What they described is that the really intense high bandwidth, but not very high distance is they don't anticipate that being the default. They see that in areas where they really need it, and there's three modes defined in 5G. One of which is basically a slightly evolutionary upgrade to 4G, and which carries the signal longer, gives you much more reliability, but at lower speeds. And they anticipate that's probably more of a significant chunk than. And the expectation is that for a lot of the deployment of the really intense, they're essentially trying to sell it to people who want to have that kind of access from their location. And they'll set something up right near you, and you get really fast wireless access around your campus or whatever.
Sporting events.
Right, things of that nature, where you're expecting to have a huge number of devices, therefore you want that bandwidth from the sharing perspective, and then lots of fiber on the back end to get you where you want to go.
So are they sort of contemplating almost a pop-up store approach to this, where they will bring it in for an event,
That's
add a fee, and then close it?
They didn't say anything about a pop-up. They seem to be more talking about you've got a remote site with several hundred people in it, and you don't want to go through the hassle of having to pay someone to run fiber 10 miles or whatever to your thing. They'll find that's where their 5G service, maybe 10 miles is too big a distance to talk about, but that was one of the concepts that came up with us, because we've got a number of sites that are in remote locations, and we're paying huge amounts of money for fiber to connect them, and they're suggesting that they may have a cheaper option with the 5G. And they're selling other services.
I think
software-defined perimeter and all that.
Does anybody know
which
why?
may or may not be?
Excuse me. Does anybody know why Watertown signed on for this, whereas Belmont is sort of thinking and rethinking this?
Do we have topographical challenges more so than other communities in this
More
area.
so than Watertown, Canada.
Well, it's flatter. I mean, well, there's
Well,
one hill,
They
but
don't have Belmont Hill.
First of all, because of the way the FTC is rolling this out, communities have very little latitude to
Yeah.
outright deny these applications. As long as there's a right of way, you've got basically 60 days to either say yay or nay. And if you say nay, then you go into negotiations with them to reach yay. And if you say nothing, then that is interpreted as a yay also. So Watertown most likely went forward with it because they were able to reach an agreement that the town was satisfied with. And Belmont actually is not debating it so much. There was a proposal put in by Extranet that the town was considering, and then that proposal was withdrawn by Extranet, and now a slightly different proposal, although mostly similar, has been resubmitted. And that, so by withdrawing it, they reset the 60-day shot clock, and now we're in the new 60-day shot clock. So
Did this happen after your presentation?
no, it happened before. The withdrawal happened before. I think our presentation was before they had resubmitted, or maybe just when they resubmitted.
So in other words, the resubmission was
Starts
either
the
at
clock.
the same time as your presentation or a little bit after.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't think those the two things are related in any
All
way.
right.
I think one of the important things that this report needs to do for the selectmen is it's kind of what's come up here, which is there's a tremendous amount of terms being thrown around. I mean, your phone will come up now and say you've got 5G when clearly you don't, like you're on 4G. So I feel like the companies behind this are really doing a lot of marketing to promote 5G and get people thinking 5G well before 5G has been deployed. And second of all, I think that because of that, there's a lot of magical thinking about who's going to get 5G and what's it going to mean. Just in our preliminary report, we informed the selectmen that FYI, these millimeter wave antennas are pretty much only going to be useful to people outside in Belmont Center. They are not even capable of penetrating storefronts to service people like store shop owners and businesses inside their business. So, just be aware that this is something, and for residential neighborhoods, they're good if you're out in your driveway or on the street. They're not going to be strong enough to penetrate the walls of your house and service you in your home.
So is the extranet proposal truly 5G? Or is it, enhanced 4G?
Well, so according to the standard, it is the low end mode of 5G.
The low end mode, right?
Or maybe the middle end mode, because the low end mode is really the 4G towers that you already have.
Right.
Essentially what they told us was that, the low end mode is an evolutionary step to 4G, and most of those things will get upgraded, and that's how they're going to do it. But real 4G is probably going to stick around forever too, or at least until 6G comes out.
Right. So most of this looks sort of,
A lot
as
of it is
Dave was
marketing.
saying, like kind of 4G plus.
Yeah.
The true, multi-gigabit per second download stuff is,
And there was one of the firms, I think Dan, you had identified this, one firm was marketing 5G when it was more the 4G plus, and then there was a whole thing.
That was
around,
AT&T who did that, yeah.
Yeah.
T-Mobile or something like that, and so they were sort of, one firm was accusing the other of diluting what the 5G brand really means and confusing consumers, because we're all now confused, so.
What are the big issues for the town? I mean, is it negotiating a proper, the best
so
possible?
a townwide deployment of millimeter wave 5G cells would be somewhere on the order of probably between 700 and more across the town, which is basically every single light pole that the town owns.
Yeah.
Would need to be replaced with one that can support a 5G antenna. And then the question is, okay, what are we getting for that in terms of services? And, obviously 5G residentially would be, the cells would service you out and about in your neighborhood, but then you would need some kind of a local presence in your home to actually serve your home. How is that going to work? So the question for the town is, okay, we definitely want 5G, right? I mean, there are huge, capabilities that would come along with it. But what does that infrastructure look like? And given that we're our own municipal company, so we actually own our own infrastructure.
Well, most of them, Verizon.
Most of them.
Yeah, right. Half.
Do we want to? Could be revenue generating for us. How do we want to structure that? What do we want to ask for in return in terms of services that AT&T can provide to the community of Belmont in exchange for access to our light poles? Those are all really good questions. I think communities that go into this with a plan have some leeway and leverage to get those concessions from AT&T, and communities that kind of back into it or go into it without a plan may not. So I think we want to be one of the former, not the latter.
And I don't think we should be limited to services either, in-kind services. I mean, you can use the cable model as a proxy, and the cable model is that, for the benefits of Verizon or Comcast using our the public rights of way to string their cables and provide cable TV service and other services, cable video services to the homes, they have to pay the town, real money.
Yes.
Plus provide some services. So
Right. This is significant. I mean,
we should think big on this.
There are these new poles that they're going to need to erect. There's going to be backhauling from some of them anyway, correct, to the fiber network.
Why are the current poles? I mean,
they're not tall
higher.
The telephone poles are inappropriate for to mount these antennas on, transmitters on, and the light poles are not tall enough. So they would need to, so even if you have a steel light pole, you can't just slap one of these things on top. You need to replace it with a new, differently shaped, but basically similar. Yeah.
Because we just replaced, not too long ago, quite a number of poles.
Yeah.
For the line voltage upgrade.
Yeah, well, in the town center,
And those are not. I thought at one point we thought that would be sufficient for, at least some things, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like to be for 5G. That's too bad.
Yeah. So these are all questions that we need to. And one of the problems of the Action Act proposal, again, is this sort of nose to the camel problem, right? They're talking about, two different cells that are basically 1,000 feet or 1,500 feet apart. So they don't really even function as a mesh themselves. And so the question is, well, what does the full deployment look like, and how do we prepare for that, and what does that really mean?
Right.
And that's kind of what
Were there other things that we wanted to put on the poles? And can they interface with those?
There's other things that they've been talking about. I'm not sure about the current proposal, but one of the ideas of 5G is that it's not only the communications, the Wi-Fi per se, but this whole notion of fog computing and edge computing, where you put more devices out closer to the users. So instead of going all the way to EC2, maybe you get your storage from the building behind where Foodies used to be. And that has a certain attraction to it. But the thing about the transceivers that kind of baffles me is, what's in it for them? There's so few people wandering around outside trying to do multi-gigabit downloads.
In winter, is that anybody ever computing in their front yard?
So it may have a lot of utility for, people talk about things like self-driving cars, really getting good information about what's going on in their environment. But other than that,
I think they're
going to recover the costs.
Yeah, I think they're anticipating demand for other types of sensors and things like that that people would want to.
I can see smart meters and things like that.
Right. Yeah, that's probably one of them. Although I don't remember.
And also economically, let's be honest, Belmont is the type of community where it makes some kind of economic sense. But if you start, the density starts to go down, and talk about Sudbury or something, it doesn't even make sense. Because you're employing these things in, at a tremendous density in communities where there isn't the population to support it. So, let alone rural communities. This is not going to be coming in this form to rural America, period.
So, yeah, I mean, I kind of get that. Let's have a plan. Let's try to do this in a way that we can negotiate the best with companies. But what's the application? What's the
We don't know.
benefit?
We don't know, and I mean, we're over a barrel because again, the FTC has
Just that you need to do it.
constructed the rules in such a way that we need to dance with them.
You mentioned, there's anticipated greater bandwidth. The other thing I've heard, right, is there's a lower latency, right? And actually, it's the lower latency that is getting a little bit more attention because it then means you can do more real-time calculations. So autonomous vehicles is the big draw. Now, again, that's much farther in the future, right? That's not, as we learn, happening in the next few years, but it enables technologies like that, right? Where you need decision-making over the line quickly because things are happening real time.
Got it.
And that low latency could be, the thing is, it's hard to imagine right now because of all the things we're talking about. If you don't have that density, then you don't have the network, hence you can't actually enable those sorts of applications, right? And how do you do that when you leave the neighborhood where it's deployed and then suddenly you're
Right.
into different
It's
types
like,
of.
we know 5G coverage now. I just,
Hands back on.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay, can we move to the real meat of this discussion, which is, I would really like to hand this report off in its final form to the Board of Selectmen, and there's work left to be done on it. I think primarily the work to be done is just interviewing some of our neighboring communities that are either in the process or have gone through the process of 5G, and that is Watertown, I believe Lexington,
I think Cambridge has done something.
and Cambridge, right? And I know that there's one other town.
One of my colleagues mentioned Somerville. I think it's gone.
Well, Somerville's suing Extranet. Yeah. So they did not say yay or nay and instead file a lawsuit. So,
Okay.
We get to know, again, the details of what that was about.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's at least one or two other communities who have done some kind of limited 5G deployment. So if we were to, Len and I are going to be meeting with Vinny or talking with Vinny from Watertown. Could I divvy some of those towns up to other committee members and have you follow up with and figure
I'll
out?
reach out
who
to
talk-
Cambridge.
You'll reach out to Cambridge? Okay. Does anybody want to take
Let me see what I can find out about that lawsuit, Somerville.
Somerville? That would be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. It should be in the public domain, so I'll
Yes.
just go online. and
That would be
figure it out.
great, Jonathan. Any one of you guys want to try Lexington, reaching out to Lexington and figuring out who to talk to?
I'll do it with somebody because I know nothing about this technology. I mean, you wanted to do it together, Dan?
Let's talk about it.
Okay.
Trying to figure it out.
Okay. And if we could just I'll create a shared doc and we could just dump all of our the fruits of our conversations.
Yeah.
I think in general, just to talk to them, be like, listen, we're going through this. We just want to understand what your experience is. If you point me to any documents
Right.
or online, or just tell me where things stand.
You guys-
That's a level of detail.
The two of you can feel free to
Yeah.
get with me as well.
Yeah.
I'm
You
fairly busy,
three
but, yeah.
coordinate and try and do Lexington and
Do we have a point of contact in Lexington? Or we can figure it out. if we need it.
yeah, figure it out.
Well, they probably have a town IT director.
Yep.
Town IT
So
director.
when we were doing the 21st century government report and looking at town use of IT, we started with town clerks for a lot of them. Because we were talking about interface with government, but the advantage of the town clerk is they know who all the town
Yes.
staff are.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
I wonder.
If they
Cambridge,
keep-
I didn't have to because Cambridge actually has a CIO and it was right on the website. So
Cambridge, they can
Went
fund
there, of course.
anything, really.
course, they're like, oh, sure, we'll be glad to talk to you. Let's set up a meeting. And then crickets.
So I wonder if Somerville has anything to do with facial recognition, because they were suing against that as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting.
Yeah, surveillance is an obvious.
it's a very, very good application of low latency.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway,
So my thoughts on getting this done for the selectmen is neighboring communities where things are. I pulled together some information just on what other communities nationally are doing out in California and West Coast where they're a little bit ahead of us. And then we can just talk about a little bit about applications, things that, the town may benefit from. And I think that'll be more than adequate for them. But I do think that they would appreciate the final report, so let's try and get it to them.
Do you know when that 60-day ends?
I don't, but I can check with Patrice. She knows.
So that should probably gate set
Yeah.
when we try to put something together.
Yeah, we should get out ahead of that.
If you tell me the start date, I'm happy to do the calculation.
Well, the thing is, I think it's.
I'll send it up to the cloud.
I think it's imminent.
Yeah, sounds like it.
I'll email Patrice right now, actually. See if we can get a update on. Okay. Any other, so updates from 21st Century Government Subcommittee? We have not met since our last meeting, so there is nothing to update us on. However, I will be scheduling a meeting because I did meet with the Board of Selectmen immediately before this meeting to talk about, Dave had mentioned in a meeting about an initiative to revamp the town's website. I met one-on-one with Patrice to say, basically, hold up, let's hire somebody to read the website. Like, this should be a more holistic process. Let's get talk to the town employees. Let's talk to the community. Let's figure out what we want out of a website. And then, so basically, the selectmen are on board with that. And they want to set up a temporary committee to spearhead that initiative and would like some ITAC representation on that committee. I don't know if anybody in the room right now is interested in that project.
Not volunteering, but let me just make the observation. I was reading something that's been in my inbox for a long time now. I guess it might have been a presentation to the Board of Selectmen within the last couple of months, done by some business economic development planning committee. And in that report, I don't know if you know the report I'm talking about, but in that report, there's actually a section on what needs to be done, what this committee, this analysis deemed was necessary to upgrade the town's website.
Oh.
So there were very specific items, maybe 20 or so
Okay.
bullet points.
Could you share that link with?
Yeah, I'll have to refine it now.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd be looking for a volunteer to represent ITAC on this committee, and my guess is it would include stakeholders from the town, from the community, and I think they're looking for us to kind of help them frame this committee and its responsibilities. Yeah, yeah.
Loath to take on too many things, but
Anybody?
I'd partner with somebody on that.
Okay, maybe you and I can partner on it.
Right.
Or kind of tag team it.
Okay. Sounds
Right.
good. Sounds good.
Okay. I'll get with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a suggestion on this, again, without volunteering, but this is just an initial feeling. Don't let this turn into be a committee that the ITAC people sort of direct,
Not at all.
You want to try and get
Yeah.
somebody else to
Yes.
stand up and be
Yes.
the
In fact, the selectman
chairman.
said, like, is it your idea that this would be and I was like, no, I don't think that we've got,
Because this
because of
really
the work
is-
that we've done on 21st century government, we've got some
and also this
information
is
to bring to the table,
Yeah.
but
it's about what the average resident wants to see in a
Absolutely.
website, not necessarily what a bunch of
Right.
IT interested people want to see.
Absolutely.
Agree. And it needs to be sustainable. I mean, right now it's
Right.
just not manageable and sustainable and
Right.
Yeah, we have to figure that one out. And it can't be us.
So we've got some data from our survey that we can share. Again, this may not be a wholesale revamp of the website. It may be, hey, we're licensing these platforms where we're only using 40% of the feature set, and if there are some integrations that we could do that would really improve. I mean, I don't really know what the shape of the conversation is going to be, but we're not going to be running it, but we are going to be participating. So yes, but I totally agree with you. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll pencil us in and get back to them. Okay.
Let me ask you, what are you looking for, if we were able to find what was going on in Lexington, what are you looking for as a report back?
On the 5G?
Yeah, a memo, basically, like, here's what Lexington is doing,
Yeah.
but not necessarily an analysis of the merits of that.
No, simply here is what was presented to them. Here's where they are in the process with that. Either they've got a 5G, cell deployment of X number of cells, and here's what it's being used for or not. Or, they're where we are. There was a proposal, here's what they came back to them with, and here's, what was agreed on. I think what we're really looking for is what are towns, asking for and getting in terms of these deployments.
I think we also need clarity as to what they're being sold, because especially in light of Dave's comments, there's 3 flavors, maybe more, of 5G.
Yes.
So, and we know that on our phones we're being sold there. We think we're getting 5G, and we're really not. So, my fear is that one of these companies, I won't name names, one or several of them might be using 5G as sort of the catch-all marketing phrase for deployments which aren't 5G at all. Yes. So I think we have to understand what's being proposed to Belmont, but also if Somerville or Lexington or Watertown, whatever, have signed up for something else. What have they signed up for? Is it true 5G, or is some
right?
Bastard
and I think from Belmont's standpoint, again, it's listen, if they're going to be cells on every street in Belmont, how do we want to plan for that, and can we turn this into a revenue opportunity for the town? And if not, and if so, what's the best way to do this for the citizens of the town, so that it's the town that's driving this and not the vendor.
Especially if we're replacing poles, what are we getting out of it?
Exactly.
I was thinking about that. Seems like a large, expensive effort.
There's part of me again that wonders, if this is a transition technology to some other yet to be named wireless, broadband technology that just either hasn't been invented or hasn't been commercialized yet. I mean, it's hard to look at the limitations of millimeter wave and see how it's going to work commercially. But I don't know. I'm not an expert.
There's always going to be something. I'm more concerned about the multi-vendor aspect of this, because right now with 4G, you get a big somewhere, church steeple, whatever it happens to be, and all the companies, AT&T, Verizon, et cetera, T-Mobile, can put their antennas on there.
Yeah.
Now, if you try to put 4 antennas on a light pole, it's going to buckle, and it's going to look terrible.
Yeah, that's the other part of it.
So does this mean that everyone in the town is going to have to use AT&T phones until they cross, into Cambridge, and then it won't work anymore?
Well, so extranet, that's kind of what extranet is they're sort of, they're an independent, right? So in theory, they are the ones negotiating with the cell providers and managing that infrastructure.
And can they carry more than one vendor?
Yes, on their poles. That's the
thing. So that would be ideal, because like you say, if we get really tall poles all over town, and then we get multiple antennas on each one, how unsightly is that going to be, right? It's going to be kind of crazy.
That woman who lives close on Common Street would be very disturbed.
Right. Well, I mean, and then
very disturbed.
We should go.
I don't think that she is alone in this.
Yeah.
She is not.
I
don't think we're allowed to make decisions on that basis, but I think it's, the voters will make decisions on that basis.
Yeah, right.
If we don't consider it.
And we have to worry about so-called pole replacement. I mean, the town got into trouble, or not the town, visually got into trouble when Verizon did a so-called pole replacement many years ago, and they didn't replace the poles, they just double pole.
Right.
So you had, the new pole just, strapped to the old pole for the longest period of time, and it was a real eyesore until they finally removed them. So any sort of pole replacement program vis-a-vis so-called 5G installation should have very clear
Aesthetic.
aesthetic compliance criteria, so that that this doesn't happen again. If they're going to actually replace a pole, they replace a pole, but not actually just add a second pole to a neighboring pole.
Sort of wonder why. Well, of course, it's hard to get inside the head of the vendor. I mean, we don't probably know enough at this point. It would seem to me that if they really want to sell this to communities like ours, where at least some people are raising a variety of issues that would lobby against the implementation, that they would go out and find a couple of locations and do an effective pilot. I mean, it's sort of like running a trial of sorts, to prove the efficacy and the logic.
Well, to some extent, I think that's what they must be doing. I mean, the proposal for 2 towers or for 2 setups is got to be just a pilot. There's really nothing you could do with that on a bigger scale.
They seem to be running around. Maybe they just assume that acceptance rate is going to be so low, they have to run around and apply to a lot of towns.
Either that, or it's just how they're managing their costs for deployment and getting their first foot in the door, start setting something up, working through whatever issues they have with that, and then doing the big repeat thing for everything else.
I don't know. I just, I guess, thinking from a business standpoint, it's not the way I would do it.
Well, but don't forget, they've already bypassed a lot of the things that they would have had to do in the past in terms of getting buy-in from the locals.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're doing it from a more pure technology, and so you don't go out and invest in huge numbers of these things and start throwing them out there when you're not sure how they're going to work in each condition. So you do a couple, and then you figure it out, and then you do a repeat later.
Well, the question is, are they only doing a couple or proposing to do only a couple?
That's what we saw last spring. The proposal was 2.
So
no, I'm talking about the number of locations. That I guess this is just a difference of approach. You're saying, well, the law is such nowadays that they can pretty much stick their nose into a community, and the community doesn't have a lot of ability to react negatively to this. So why not do it, as opposed to going to a community and giving them such a great deal in terms of services and revenues?
Well, there's still there's still a property issue.
I'm sorry.
It's still a property issue. It's still town property. It's not like they can take it by eminent domain. They're not the government.
No, but it seems like they sort of, or can't they sort of attach themselves to poles if they so desire or not?
I've got to figure that even whatever the FTC has given them in terms of towns have to eventually get to yes, but they're not saying the towns have lost control of their property. That's probably too much of a reach. I'm speculating. I'm not a lawyer, but I have a feeling that would be a much harder.
It's a big talk. Okay. The only other thing with 21st Century is there is a first meeting for the remote committee, the multi-stakeholder group that is happening in I think mid-November, and so I'm going to be taking part in that, as well as the town clerk, I think somebody from the selectman's office, and Dave, and so we're going to sit down and start hashing out how to make committees remotely accessible.
Awesome.
Yes. And I will schedule a meeting for us and update the rest of the committee on that.
Very good.
Subcommittee, sorry. Glenn?
No updates from us, but we haven't met since the last meeting. We obviously have a lot.
Yeah,
So we'll call a meeting. I'll send out some possible
Yeah,
dates.
sure.
We'll also get Jim looped in, so that
Oh, yeah, of course.
And
that's why I didn't want to set the date here.
I wonder if he knows any female police officers who would like to join our committee.
be good.
Yeah.
Let's move ahead and just schedule our next
Wait.
meeting.
You want to do that before executive session?
Oh, yeah,
I'd like to propose we move to executive session to talk
sounds
about.
good. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No.
Paper's over.
Yes. And our final order of business is just to find a time for our next meeting. And I am open to suggestions on that. I would say, obviously, with the Thanksgiving holiday,
Do you want it before?
before would be pretty soon. That'd be
Pretty soon.
sometime in the next couple of weeks. I don't know.
Or
What, the 18th, you mean?
I'm going to say,
One of the tricks is if we need to actually meet before we issue a 5G report.
Yes.
And there's a deadline on what they might want.
Yeah,
I think we should set one for end last week in November with the understanding that we may
The
need
last
to.
week in November is Thanksgiving week. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
saying,
you're right.
that's why I'm asking if you want to try to do something the week of the 18th.
18th. So
Yeah.
that's right. I'm sorry. I always thought it was, yeah. Week of the 18th, with the proviso that we may, because of the shot clock issue with 5G, need to convene and just review the report and approve it. But we could do that, frankly, in our morning meeting, spend 45 minutes.
So do you want to call Monday, the 18th then?
That works for me.
works for me.
Sure.
Same
18th.
bat time, same bat channel.
That's what, sorry, that's November 18th.
Monday, November 18th.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Somebody want to second that? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Glenn.
Sorry, yeah, I've got another
Nope, go for it.
engagement.
Thanks so much.
Got to move a robot.
All right.
All right.
So is that supposed to move themselves?
Not yet. All right, thanks, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Take care.
Take care. Glenn.
Okay, not bad. 9:13. It's fairly efficient.
We went over a lot of things, some that we didn't anticipate.
Yes.
I just realized I may have a conflict on the 18th, but I'm not certain, so we'll just leave it there.
I'm going to stop the recording.